I want to start with a story. Joan was pretty sure she wasn't ready for Christmas. This year, it wasn't that she had more shopping to do or more cookies to make. It was she wasn't ready, if you know what I mean. In fact, she didn't want it to come at all. She had heard the preacher promise Christmas would heal us and something would come to pass. She had heard the encouragement of friends. But when she looked out at her neighborhood, at the blow-up reindeer bobbing in the cold north wind and the lights in the trees, she didn't want it at all. This was mostly true because this was the first Christmas without her beloved. It had been a year, and she remembered a year ago thinking her beloved looked up and saw the same stars in the east that she had looked at and never returned. The circumstances were too difficult to ponder. It had been a long and lonely year. And this time around, the house was still at night, no stirring or sound, just that branch outside the window rubbing on the house, a branch she didn't have the energy to cut. The buzz of the dishwasher reminding her how few dishes there were to clean without the baking and the cooking. Now Christmas was near, and she stayed a little longer in bed in the morning and ate a little more than she knew she should. Remembering the sign in the window of the church that said, "It's not dark because it's Christmas because it's dark." Wasn't that the truth? The office party had been torture. The music irritated her. It was everywhere, and every time she heard, "I'll be home for Christmas," she wanted to tear the radio out of the car. Church was okay, though. The people were kind enough. The music was lovely, but she didn't want this Christmas season. She just wanted things to be normal. But Christmas did come, and days before it, when they lit the fourth Advent candle and the preacher reminded them that they had counted up to 4 while the stores had counted down, Christmas Eve was around the corner. Something the preacher said made her agree she would come to church for Christmas Eve. That evening was plain as any, a small meal with no family near, a call from a cousin. Friends encouraged her to come out, and she just quietly made her way to church, not wanting any of this cheer, not wanting any of it. But she came in and she sat in the pew with the Madison family, their youngest bouncing around the pew like a ping pong ball. Must have been too much sugar or the anticipation of Santa. The service was quiet, excepting the Madison child who wanted the stories explained. Patiently, the father whispered what was happening all throughout. And then it was time for candlelight. Silent night started, and tears streamed down her face, and she remembered. The candles were lit one by one down the rows, and she lit hers and couldn't get a verse of Silent Night from her lips. Then it was quiet, almost silent. She looked down the pews at all the beautiful, soft light on the faces of the people in her church. And then she looked at the youngest Madison child, once again, or once a bouncing ball, now transfixed by the candle in hand, and suddenly she understood something. She understood the innocence and wonder in that child was also in her. She understood a peace existed that was greater than she could create, and that peace was there for all. And she knew a love bigger than she knew in her heart lived on, bigger than the one she had lost. Transfixed in that moment, she felt a certain mercy flow through her. She felt a burden lift. And she felt the Madison child who had snuggled up against her, a warm and loving presence surrounding them all. And then they blew out their candles and they sang joy to the world, and the tears didn't stop, but the pain had stopped, even for just a moment. She went quietly home after church, thanking the preacher and the choir director with embraces and a Christmas greeting. When she arrived home, there was another surprise. Her friends had baked the cookies she loved to make each year and left them on her stoop as a gift. Renewed by both the magic of the evening and the kindness of her friends, she sat quietly in her window, a cookie and a cup of tea in hand, smiling at the blow-up reindeer, now half deflated, bobbing up and down and marveling at the lights on her street and hoping Christmas would never end. I wrote that story for you because some of us here are like Joan. To no fault of our own, we can't stand the idea of Christmas this year. We can't look around and be joyful as the season wants us to be. We know that the ideal of perfection is not the ideal that will come to pass in our hearts. And some of us are that child prepared to be surprised by wonder, ready for anything. And some, like the friends, are ready to exert kindness on someone who needs it and doesn't expect it. You see, Christmas will come tomorrow evening whether we want it to or not. Isn't that the truth? And it will offer us moments of magic right here in the sanctuary. I've seen it every year for 17 years with you, sitting in the dark with our candles and our silent night. And it'll happen wherever we are if we put some intention into it. Because this story has lasted so long to remind us of these things. That it's not easy to birth God into the world. That when we don't expect it, the world can be turned upside down, that mercy can reign even when we don't see it. That it's difficult to open ourselves to the greater forces of the world when we have so much to deal with and so much rushing about. That it's hard to remember that we aren't called by this ancient holiday to acquire things, but rather to join something bigger than ourselves. That it isn't easy to remember that holy mercy can be ours to receive and give when we are racing around and fighting the many fights that we are waging. Sometimes the work of the ages can heal the soul, can point to something amazing, can hold us in a great love. That's why we have Christmas at all. Today we build this as the Christmas Blues Sunday because we all know it in one way or another. The blues is the blues because it's the music grounded in a struggle for dignity and for life and for safety, in loss, in diaspora. From slavery to the guitars and pianos of those who play it today, it was a music that sought mercy even when all seemed lost. It was the blues because it not only named the struggle, but pointed to hope, strength, and courage. Oftentimes in the face of great odds. That's the Christmas story. Seasons like Christmas, when you strip them away from all that we have attached to them, are embodiments of the same thing. They call us to lift our gaze, and if we are attentive, to receive their blessings. So if the Christmas blues is yours today, if you are like Joan, I say to you, come tomorrow and let us wash your soul in a beauty bigger than us all. If you know someone who is mired in the Christmas blues today, then you are the person who has 24 hours to do something unexpected and kind beyond all measure for the person who needs you the most. And if you are neither of those, then your call is simply to be ready, to be open, to be welcoming of a spirit of this season that is never and has never been about the birth of a child, about a young mother and father, about journeys of the kings. It has always been about finding hope in the dark. We'll see you tomorrow. Amen.